She's standing on my doorstep in the rain at midnight, wearing the same black dress she wore to her husband's funeral 3 days ago, and her eyes are hollow in a way that suggests she's left part of herself in the ground with him. "I need you to help me forget him," she whispers, and I see in that moment that she's not asking me to comfort her. She's asking me to destroy her. She's asking me to love her in a way that will obliterate every memory of the man she buried, and I'm terrified that I'm exactly the kind of broken person who would do it. My name is Thomas, and I've spent the last 5 years living alone in a way that suggests I'm not really living at all. My wife left me because I couldn't give her what she needed. A husband who was present, emotionally available, capable of seeing her as something other than a possession to be protected. She was right to leave. I was toxic in the way that only men with good intentions can be, suffocating under the guise of love. I haven't dated since the divorce was finalized. I haven't even tried. Instead, I've poured myself into my work as a trauma therapist, which is ironic considering I'm drowning in my own trauma. I help people process grief and loss and heartbreak, while carefully avoiding processing my own. My neighbor, Eleanor, moved in next door 18 months ago with her husband, David. They were picture perfect, the kind of couple that makes other people believe in love despite evidence to the contrary. David was a cardiac surgeon. Eleanor was a concert pianist. They threw dinner parties. They laughed easily. They made marriage look like something worth fighting for. I watched them from my window in the way that lonely people do. I watched them dance in their living room to music I couldn't hear. I watched David hold Eleanor like she was made of something precious and breakable. And I felt a sharp, bitter ache that I recognized immediately: desire. Not for Eleanor specifically, but for the life they had. For the ability to love someone without destroying them. Last month, David had a heart attack while performing surgery. He died on the operating table, surrounded by colleagues who tried desperately to save him. The irony of a cardiac surgeon being unable to save himself was not lost on anyone. Eleanor disappeared into grief for 3 weeks. I saw her only once at the funeral, where she stood in black like a ghost already haunting her own life. And I told myself to stay away. To let her process this in whatever way felt right. To not project my own damage onto her vulnerability. But then she appears at my door at midnight. I open it to find her soaking wet, shivering, with an expression that suggests she's been crying for so long that her body has forgotten how to do anything else. She's still in the black dress from the funeral, and it's clinging to her skin. "Eleanor, Jesus, come inside." She doesn't move. She just stares at me with eyes that look like they've seen the bottom of the world. "I need you to do something for me," she says, and her voice is barely above a whisper. "I need you to help me stop loving him. I need you to help me forget that he ever existed." "You don't mean that." "I do." She's shaking now, but not from cold. "I was at the cemetery today and I kept thinking about how unfair it is that he just gets to be gone. He doesn't have to carry this pain. He doesn't have to wake up tomorrow and realize that he's never going to hear his voice again. He doesn't have to figure out who he is without him." She looks at me with something close to desperation. "So I thought of you. I thought of how you've always looked at me. And I thought maybe if I let myself feel something else I could stop feeling this." "Eleanor, you're grieving. You're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking clearly for the first time in years." She steps closer. "I'm thinking that I spent 13 years loving that man and he's gone. He's just gone. And I wasted so much time being grateful for his love when I could have been doing something else. Something selfish. Something that was just for me. I should shut the door. I should tell her to go home and call a grief counselor. I should do the right thing, which is to protect her from herself and from me. Instead, I pull her inside. The kiss tastes like salt and desperation and the kind of reckless abandon that comes from losing everything you thought mattered. She's all sharp angles and trembling hands, and when I hold her, I feel something ancient wake up inside me, something that's been sleeping since my marriage ended. "I can't promise you forever," she whispers against my mouth. "I can only promise you now." "I know." "I can't promise you that I'll ever love you the way I loved him." "I know." "Then what are we doing?" I pull back to look at her. Even devastated, even broken, she's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. "We're surviving," I tell her. "We're both drowning and we're reaching for each other in the dark. That's all this is." She nods and kisses me again, and I tell myself that I can handle this. That I'm capable of being what she needs without demanding anything in return. That I can love her without destroying her. I'm lying to both of us. 6 months pass like a fever dream. Eleanor moves in. Her belongings gradually overtake my space. Her piano in the living room, her books on my shelves, her ghost haunting every corner of my house. During the day, she works with a therapist to process David's death. At night, she comes to me and we erase him together. The sex is desperate and consuming. There's no tenderness in it because tenderness would require acknowledging the wreckage underneath. Instead, there's only urgency, the need to feel alive, to feel anything other than the grief that's slowly consuming her. I tell myself this is healing. I tell myself that being present for her is an act of love. But the truth is more complicated and darker. The truth is that I'm using her pain to avoid processing my own. The truth is that I'm becoming obsessed with her in a way that mirrors the obsessive patterns that destroyed my marriage. She doesn't belong to me, and yet I'm beginning to act like she does. It starts small. Questions about where she's been during the day. Concerns about who she's talking to. Jealousy when she mentions a colleague who helped her with something. She thinks it's sweet. She thinks it's proof that I care. But I see the way her face changes. I see the way she becomes smaller, more careful, more devoted to managing my emotions alongside managing her own grief. "You're becoming like him," she says one night, and the words are so quiet I almost miss them. Like who? Like David. She's curled against my chest, her fingers playing with the buttons on my shirt. He was the same way. Possessive. Controlling everything. Making sure I was completely dependent on him before I even realized what was happening. I'm not like that. No, she agrees, but there's doubt in her voice. You're different. You're aware of it. But that almost makes it worse because I know you're doing it on purpose. I should let her leave. I should recognize the pattern and break it before I cause irreversible damage. But I'm already too far gone. I'm already convinced that if she leaves me, I'll disappear completely. That's when her brother arrives. His name is Marcus, and he appears on a Saturday afternoon with the kind of charisma that suggests people fall into his orbit whether they want to or not. He's handsome in a way that's calculated, designer clothes, perfect smile, eyes that suggest he's smarter than everyone else in the room. "Eleanor told me she was living with someone," he says, shaking my hand with a grip that feels like a threat. "I wanted to meet the man who's been taking care of my sister." There's something in his tone that suggests this isn't a casual visit. And when I catch Eleanor's expression, the way she looks at Marcus with a mixture of love and fear, I understand that there's a history there that she hasn't shared with me. "How long have you been with my sister?" Marcus asks, and it sounds like an interrogation. 6 months, I say carefully. 6 months since our father died, you mean? Since Eleanor was at her most vulnerable. He's still smiling, but there's nothing warm in it. Must have been easy to move in, convince her that you were the only person who could help her through the grief. That's not what happened. Isn't it? Marcus moves toward Eleanor protectively. My sister is brilliant. She's talented. And she's also deeply loyal to people who claim to love her. Which makes her very easy to manipulate. Marcus, stop. Eleanor's voice is sharp, but I can see her wavering. "I'm protecting you," he says. "The way I've always protected you. Thomas here is obviously using your grief to trap you in a relationship that benefits him far more than it benefits you." "That's insane," I say, but I'm wondering if there's truth in his accusation. Wondering if I'm capable of being as self-aware as I pretend to be. That's when Marcus reveals something that changes everything. "Did Eleanor tell you that she was responsible for my father's death?" he says casually. "Did she mention that the grief she's been processing isn't just about losing him, but about the guilt of knowing that she caused his heart attack?" "That's a lie," Eleanor whispers, but she's not denying it to Marcus. She's denying it to herself. "Tell him," Marcus says. "Tell him about the fight you had with Dad that morning. Tell him about how you told him you were leaving David. Tell him about how the stress of knowing you were unhappy caused the cardiac event that killed him." Eleanor stands and walks to the window, her shoulders shaking. "It wasn't like that," she says. "I didn't know it would. I couldn't have known." "But you blame yourself," Marcus continues. "And you've been using this man as penance. As punishment for surviving when our father didn't." I look at Eleanor and I finally see the truth. She's not healing. She's flagellating herself through me. She's using our relationship as a form of self-destruction because somewhere inside, she believes that happiness is something she doesn't deserve. And I've been enabling it the entire time. The rift that forms between Eleanor and me is instantaneous and complete. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked that night. "Because it wasn't relevant," she says, but we both know that's a lie. It's completely relevant. You've been sleeping with me out of guilt. You've been with me because you think you deserve to be miserable. And you've been with me because you needed someone to obsess over. You needed someone to control. She stands up and starts gathering her things. "We're both using each other, Thomas. At least Marcus was honest about his motives." "What does that mean?" What do you mean about Marcus's motives? She doesn't answer. Instead she leaves. And I spend the next week watching from my window as Marcus comes and goes from the house next door. I watch as Eleanor begins to regain weight, to smile, to look like she's actually living again. The jealousy that consumes me is a living thing. It has teeth and claws and it's eating me from the inside out. I tell myself that Marcus is manipulating her. That he's using her grief to his advantage. But the truth is that she seems happier with him than she ever was with me. That's when I make the mistake of following them one night. I watch as they go to a bar and I see Marcus order her a drink. I see the way he leans close to her ear, whispering something that makes her laugh. I see the way he touches her arm, proprietary and intimate. And then I see him drug her. It's subtle, a moment when his hand is over her glass, a quick movement, a glance around to see if anyone noticed. And then he's watching as her eyes begin to glaze over. He's calling a car. He's helping her inside, his hand on her waist like a lover. I'm moving before I've even processed what I'm doing. I pull Eleanor out of the car and Marcus comes at me with surprising violence. We fight in the street outside the bar, and by the time security arrives, Marcus is already gone. Eleanor is barely conscious. When I get her to the hospital, the toxicology report confirms what I already knew. She was drugged with a sedative. And when she wakes up, she doesn't remember anything except Marcus's smile before everything went dark. The police investigation reveals that Marcus has a history of targeting women. That Eleanor wasn't his first victim. That he'd been watching her since David died, waiting for the moment when she'd be vulnerable enough to manipulate. When Eleanor discovers that it was me who pulled her out of that car, that it was me who's been watching her even after she asked me to leave, something in her expression hardens. You followed me, she says quietly. You were obsessing over me. And the only reason you found out about Marcus is because you were already invading my privacy. I was protecting you. You were protecting your possession. You couldn't stand that I was happy with someone else, so you told yourself a story that justified your obsession. Eleanor, I saved your life. You saved the version of me that you needed to exist. But that's not love, Thomas. That's just a different flavor of the same poison you were feeding me before. The trial is devastating. Marcus's lawyers paint Eleanor as someone who was actively seeking out dangerous situations, who was complicit in her own victimization, who had led on their client with false intimacy. I sit in the courtroom every day and I watch the case fall apart. Watch as Marcus walks out on a technicality because Eleanor's credibility has been destroyed. And watch as Eleanor's eyes grow emptier with each passing day. 6 months after the incident, Eleanor moves away. I don't know where. Her house sits empty, and I resist the urge to break in and feel close to her through her abandoned belongings. Instead, I do something I should have done years ago. I check myself into a psychiatric hospital. I admit that I'm addicted to obsession. That I'm incapable of loving people without destroying them. That the cycle has to end with me. Healing isn't linear. It's messy and complicated and requires confronting truths about myself that I would prefer to ignore. I spend 2 years in intensive therapy. I confront the origins of my need to possess and control. I understand, finally, that it all comes back to my father, to a man who taught me that love was about ownership and that women existed primarily to meet men's needs. I emerge from that hospital a different person. Not better, necessarily, but honest. And that honesty is the first real gift I've ever given anyone. I don't expect Eleanor to come back. I don't expect redemption or second chances. I'm simply trying to become someone I can actually respect. That's when I get the letter. It arrives at my office, postmarked from 3 months ago. The handwriting is Eleanor's, careful and deliberate. Thomas, it reads, I've been in therapy too. I've been processing the guilt and the grief in the ways that I used both of you to avoid being alone. I came to understand something important. You loved me in the only way you knew how. You were broken and you tried to fill the broken places inside you with me. And I let you because I was also broken and I wanted someone to save me. But here's what I've learned, nobody can save us. We have to save ourselves. We have to become whole independently, and only then can we choose each other from a place of strength instead of desperation. I don't know if you've done the work. I don't know if you've confronted the reasons you needed to control me, but I'm giving you a chance to show me. If you've really changed, meet me at the pier on the anniversary of David's death. If you don't show up, I'll understand. And I'll finally be able to let you go. The letter is dated for today. I look at the clock, and I have 2 hours to decide whether I'm brave enough to face her again. 2 hours to decide whether the work I've done is real or just another performance, another way of manipulating people into believing I'm better than I am. I drive to the pier and I wait. She arrives exactly at sunset and I don't move toward her. Instead, I stand still and let her approach me. Let her see me exactly as I am, broken still but honest about it. I did the work, I tell her. I went to hospital. I confronted my father's legacy. I acknowledged that I was possessive and controlling. And I'm not asking for your forgiveness because I don't deserve it. No, she agrees. You don't. But I'm asking for the possibility of being better. Not for you. For me. Because you deserve to know that the man who loved you has at least tried to become someone worth loving. She's quiet for a long moment. Then she says, I don't love you, Thomas. The words are like a knife, clean and final. I nod, accepting it. I understand. But I care about you. And that's something I didn't think I would ever be able to do. She steps closer. I'm not going to be with you. Not romantically. But I want to know if you're open to friendship. Real friendship, without possession or control or the need to own each other. I think I would like that, I say, and I'm surprised to find that I mean it. That the idea of having Eleanor in my life without the obsession is enough. We're going to have to be careful, she says. We're going to have to be honest about our limits. And the moment either of us feels like we're slipping back into old patterns, we need to be brave enough to walk away again. I can do that. She reaches out and takes my hand, and it's the most platonic gesture and the most intimate gesture simultaneously. We stand on that pier as the sun disappears into the ocean, and I realize that this is what redemption actually looks like. Not the grand romantic reunion I fantasized about. But the quiet acceptance that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the freedom to be loved by you without being destroyed in the process. 2 years later, Eleanor gets married. I attend the wedding, and I watch her walk down the aisle with a man who looks at her like she's the most precious thing he's ever seen. And I don't feel jealousy or possessiveness or the need to reclaim what was never mine to begin with. Instead, I feel something simpler and more profound. Genuine happiness that she's found someone capable of loving her the way she deserves. After the ceremony, she hugs me and whispers, "Thank you." For what? For loving me enough to let me go. For becoming someone I could actually forgive. As I watch her walk back to her husband, I understand that this is the only redemption I'm ever going to get. Not romantic, not passionate, not the kind of all-consuming love that makes for good movies. But real. And honest. And based on a foundation of actual respect instead of obsession. And that, I finally understand, is worth more than any fantasy I could have constructed.